So I believe most of you are aware that Sclerotinia has been a problem in canola production, especially in our northern agriculture region over the past few years. I will start off with the levels of Sclerotinia in canola crops, especially in the northern agriculture region over the past few years. In this graph, it shows the mean incidence of Sclerotinia and prevalence, which is the percentage crops affected with Sclerotinia from 2008 through to 2010 in the northern ag region. And if you look at this, both the incidence and the severity or the prevalence of Sclerotinia has been very high, especially during 2008 and 2009. And surprisingly, in 2010, there was very low incidence of Sclerotinia. If you look at the mean value of Sclerotinia has significantly dropped in 2010, and also the percentage crop affected were also nearly halved in 2010. So what happened in 2011? With the absence of disease or nearly absence of the disease in 2010, Sclerotinia returned in 2011. There was widespread incidence of Sclerotinia across the northern agricultural region, and also it was also present in the central agricultural region. Incidence of Sclerotinia was as high as up to 80% in the worst affected crops, especially in the NAR region. And the yield loss resulted from infection of Sclerotinia ranged between 30 to 40% in untreated crops. In case of central region, the incidence was of course very low, and it rarely exceeded 10%. And similarly, the incidence of Sclerotinia has been very low in the southern agriculture region, most probably because of the development of late epidemics in the crops. I will just quickly go through the Sclerotinia disease cycle just to give you an idea of how this disease survives and then develops into the crops. Sclerotinia survives in the soil in the form of these tiny little very hard black fruiting bodies, which are called sclerotia, and they can survive in the soil for a very long time, from like 3, 4, maybe up to 5, 6 years. Under favorable conditions, these sclerotes germinate and they produce apothecia, which are tiny little fruiting bodies. They resemble mushroom, but they are actually very, very small in size. They rarely exceed 5 millimeters in length. And this is actually the carpogenic germination of the sclerotes. So after they produce apothecia, and the spores are actually produced underneath these mushroom-like structures in asi, and then the spores are released from these asi, and they infect the petals at the flowering time. As you can see, when we did some petal testing, a lot of Sclerotinia came out of the petals. So what is required after the petal gets infected? We really need constant wet conditions and humid conditions for the disease to further progress in the crop. So once the petals they get infected, they fall on the leaf or maybe in the axil of the stem where the branches are attached, and then the infection actually gets into the stem from this point. I must make a mention that Sclerotinia ascospores on their own, they are very weak spores. They can't really infect the either leaves or stem directly. They have to infect the petals first to derive their nutrition from the petals. So once these spores, these infected petals fall onto the stem or on the leaf, the fungus gets into the stem and it starts producing water-soaked lesions with concentric zonation. You will notice these are the initial signs of the disease. But what happens if the conditions are really dry? Soon after the petal infection, the disease just doesn't progress. It completely hampers the development of the disease from there on. So apart from indirect germination of the sclerotes, there is direct germination is also possible in some instances. In case of direct germination, what happens, the sclerotes just germinate in the soil, especially they produce mycelium or the fungal hyphae, and if they then infect the plants which are present in the vicinity of these sclerotes, they just, the fungus just enters into the stem through that point and causes basal stem infection. It is quite common in other crops, but in case of canola, this rarely happens. In case of canola, most of the infection comes from the infected petals, and rarely it comes from directly by direct germination of the sclerotia. So under favorable conditions, as I said, the fungus starts girdling the stem and it makes the stem very weak, which results into lodging of the plant. And especially if the conditions are really wet, normally sometimes you will see white fluffy growth of the fungus which is present on the outside of the stem. So if you really split open these infected stems later in the season, just before harvest or after harvest, you will see these dark fungal fruiting structures which are sclerotia. They are present inside the stem, but as I mentioned, if the conditions are really wet, these sclerotia may be present on the outside, and sometimes they can be present on the roots as well. And so after we harvest, the sclerotia drop on the soil, on the ground, where they stay dormant, and then they start producing apothecia when the favorable conditions return during the next season. Okay, given such a high problem of sclerotinia, especially in our northern agriculture region, so we embarked on sclerotinia research activities to combat this disease. We did some work on epidemiology of the disease, just to understand factors that are responsible for the development of this disease, and which we did through petal testing and spore trapping. And we also did some work on efficacy of fungicides and timing of application of the fungicides, just to ensure we get the maximum efficacy of the products. And we also did some screening for resistance under controlled environment, as we know that there is not much known about the resistance level of our current commercial canola varieties to sclerotinia. So the overall aim of this research was actually to develop a sclerotinia risk assessor that should help growers to determine their risk from sclerotinia and should apply appropriate control measures to reduce the risk of this disease. Okay, first of all, I'll present some of the data which we did on petal testing. So the idea of petal testing was actually to underline or determine the factors which were responsible for sclerotinia sclerotes to germinate and cause infection on the petals. So in 2010, we did this work at two sites, at Walkaway and East Chapman. So this y-axis here represents the percentage petal infected, and we did collect samples starting from 1% bloom through to 50% bloom. So if you look at the results, especially at both locations in 2010, at 1% flowering, there was very high level of petal infection. There were almost 100% petals were infected at that stage. So what happened at Walkaway? The high level of petal infection continued until 30% flowering, and it just slightly dropped to 80% at 50% flowering. But in case of East Chapman, there was a sharp decline in petal infection at 10% flowering, and there was further decline, but it completely reduced to zero level of petal infection at 50%. So looking at this data, we were really thinking that especially our trial at Walkaway will be absolutely smashed with the disease, and we were thinking there will be disaster really. But to our great surprise, it didn't happen. So what happened was the maximum level of disease we got at Walkaway was less than 5% incidence, and almost none or very negligible disease at East Chapman. So it really shows that petal infection is not a good indicator of determining the final disease severity in canola. So we repeated this experiment in 2011, but this time we used actually 3 different varieties. early, mid, and late maturing varieties. The idea was to look at if the flowering time has an effect on reducing the disease severity. For example, especially in case of late maturing varieties, whether the late maturing varieties can escape disease by avoiding the ascospores which are released at early stages. So if you look at this data, if you can see in case of cobbler, which is a medium sort of maturity variety, the level of petal infection was very high at 5% bloom, and it really reduced to 80% at 5% when we took samples 1 week after 5% bloom, and then it continued to increase steadily until it reached just around 100% 4 weeks after 5% bloom. In case of Telfer, which is a sort of a early maturing variety, so it was quite variable, the level of petal infection. Interestingly, there was a sharp decline in petal infection 3 weeks after 5% bloom, and then it slightly increased after 4 weeks. But it was totally different situation in a late maturing variety such as Thampa. There was increase in the level of petal infection up to 3 weeks after 5% bloom, and there was a sharp decline in the level of petal infection 4 weeks after 5% bloom. So, but we ended up very significant level of disease in this trial. So again, this really demonstrates that there is some other environmental conditions post-petal infection which are really, really important for the disease to develop in the crop. Now coming to the efficacy of fungicides on disease. So we did some trial work last year to look at the effectiveness of various products on the disease severity and yield of canola varieties. And we actually used various products, some registered and some unregistered products, because we didn't have much information on whether we have efficacy of these products under our situation. So we used products like Amistar Extra and Filan, which are not registered in Australia at the moment. Of course, these products have shown good efficacy overseas for Sclerotinia, and they are recommended in Canada and the US. And then we took some registered products such as Fortress and of course Porzaro, which is also unregistered product, but it has shown good efficacy again overseas. And then we used Rovrel, which is a recommended product for Sclerotinia management in Australia. So we used these products at recommended rates, and for unregistered products such as Amistar Extra and Filan, we use the rate which is normally used overseas. And Porzaro, similarly, we use two rates, 375 mils per hectare and 525 mil per hectare. So if you look at the results, they were really encouraging. As you can see, all these fungicide products, except for Amistar Extra, significantly reduce both the incidence as well as the severity of the disease compared with the nil treatment. But interestingly, all these fungicide products significantly improved the yield. And we had very good yield responses with all the fungicide products compared with the nil treatment. Sorry, I forgot to mention that for this trial, we applied fungicides at two different stages, 10% and 40% flowering, to maximize the effectiveness of these products. So, yeah, so it was quite encouraging last year to see that the fungicide products were really effective in reducing the impact of Sclerotinia. And we were lucky enough to do an opportunistic trial as well last year, given the conditions looked pretty much right for the Sclerotinia to take off. So we actually tried only two products for this opportunistic trial, Rovrel and Porzaro. Rovrel was tried at 2 liters per hectare and Porzaro at a higher rate, which was 525 mil per hectare. And in this case, we applied fungicide only at 15% flowering stage. And you can see that from this data, these bars represent the yield in kilograms per hectare, and this line represents disease incidence. So you can see clearly that both Porzaro and Rovrel, there was significant reduction in the level of disease incidence compared with the untreated control. and there was significant improvement in yield, especially in case of Rosaro. Okay, now you look at the economics of applying fungicides, as my other colleagues mentioned in their talks. It's really important to know whether you will get return on their investment, especially in case of Sclerotinia. It's really important to know whether you will get any benefit of applying fungicides, because in literature, in most of the time you will read that whenever the fungicides are applied for the control of Sclerotinia in other crops system, or even in canola, most of the time the fungicides miss the target, and of course that results into poor disease control. So interestingly, in our case, last year we were lucky enough to have this effect of fungicide. They were really effective, and we really wanted to work out how much return we get on our investment. So to work out the economics of applying fungicides for Sclerotinia control, we assumed the canola price at $500 per ton, and the cost of application of fungicide at $5 per hectare. So if you look at, and this column here shows you the cost of the fungicide product for each treatment. And if you look at this right hand side column here, it was really encouraging to see the cost benefit of applying fungicide, especially for these products. Roveral gave us a benefit of $98 per hectare. Prozaro at 375 mil, the cost benefit was, the benefit of applying fungicide over untreated was $225 per hectare. Similarly, high rate of Prozaro, $240 per hectare. For Fortress, it was $40. And interestingly, for Amistar Extra and Phylan, despite their good yield response, they gave negative return because of the high cost of these two fungicides. Okay, if you look at the cost or economics of applying fungicides in the opportunistic trial, we got similar sort of results. As you can see, in case of Roveral, we got about $79 per hectare benefit, and in case of Prozaro, this is 525 mil, not 575. We got a return of about $200 per hectare, assuming similar assumptions for the canola price and the cost of application of the fungicide. Okay, so last year we also tried to investigate the best timing of fungicide application for management of Sclerotinia. So we were lucky enough that last year we applied fungicides at the right time, and we got very good disease control. But before that, we had no idea, what stage would be the best to apply fungicide to get the maximum efficacy of the fungicides. For this trial, we actually had 3 different varieties which differ in their maturity from early, mid to late. And the fungicide application was applied at 1% bloom through to 4 weeks after 1% bloom. And we also included a treatment of maximum fungicide spray. So every time when we applied a treatment, we had a treatment where we applied fungicide application just to see if we get a good control of the disease. And actually this treatment was also for determining the yield potential of the crop. So if you look at the data, it was really interesting to see that early application of fungicide was not really beneficial. If you look at the disease incidence when we applied the fungicide at 5% bloom, there was no significant difference. It was almost similar to the nil treatment, but there was a significant reduction in the level of disease when we applied fungicide 1 week after 1% bloom, which is roughly about 20 to 30% flowering stage. So it clearly shows that the fungicide may not be able to protect the new petals which are coming after we applied at 1% stage, because at 1% there are only 2 or 3 petals you will see on the main stem. Okay, now look at the level of Sclerotinia incidence in the 3 canola varieties averaged over the timing of fungicide application. And you will see, interestingly, there was not much difference in the level of Sclerotinia both in cobbler and Telfer, but in case of Thumper there was a significant reduction in Sclerotinia. So basically, Thumper is a late maturing variety. So this reduction in disease in Thumper, either it is due to its lateness of the variety, and that would have actually caused the development of late epidemic in this variety. And in reality, I mean, if the epidemics develop late in a crop, then there is not much time for the fungus to actually grow and cause a lot of disease. So possibly this may be one of the reasons that there wasn't much disease in Thumper, and secondly, it may be due to its resistance, genetic resistance, which we really don't know. Okay, so we also did some work on the screening for Sclerotinia resistance under controlled conditions. As we get often asked this question, whether we have resistance in our commercial canola varieties, and we really tell every time, yes, there is not much resistance or poor resistance, but in reality, we really don't know, because no one has ever tested the level of resistance in our canola varieties. So idea was just to screen our commercial varieties under controlled conditions just in case if we find resistance in our varieties. So we tried various published methods for this purpose. We used macerated mycelium inoculations on intact cotyledons. We also tried agar plug inoculations on leaves and also on the stem, and we used about 19 different isolates on, and we had 16 genotypes or canola varieties for this purpose, and we repeated this experiment at least 4 to 5 times. But unfortunately, none of the above methods was really satisfactory. We really couldn't come to a conclusion whether we have real resistance in our varieties or not. The main reason for this was the lack of consistency in these methods. If we use one method, some varieties show resistance, and if we use a different method, showing varieties which were resistant, now they show susceptible reaction. So it was really difficult thing for us to find out. And of course, one of the highlight of this work was actually we found pathogenic variations among isolate, which actually tells there is some genetic diversity exists in the fungal pathogens of Sclerotinia, which were not really known in the past. So this is just an example of one of the experiments we did under controlled conditions, where we actually looked at the reaction of 14 different canola varieties with 5 different isolates. As you can see, there was a variable response in all these varieties, and I think there are 2 highlights came out from this experiment. Was one of them was there is, of course, pathogenic variation in the isolates. As you can see, this isolate 61 is very highly aggressive, and it almost killed the canola. It almost led to about 100% mortality in most of the canola varieties. And whereas the isolate 6 was least aggressive, and you can see like sort of very low to intermediate reaction in some varieties. And the second thing that came out from this experiment was, if you look at Telfer, I guess, yes, here. It seemed to be susceptible to all those 5 isolates that we screened, and in case of 46Y81, it was intermediate in its reaction. As you can see, there was high mortality only with one isolate, whereas the other isolates, they gave almost intermediate reaction on this variety. So, but still we are not really sort of convinced at this stage, because this work was done under controlled environment conditions, but we really need to develop a technique where we can actually evaluate these varieties under field conditions, and we get consistent response. Either we screen in the glasshouse conditions, controlled conditions, or we screen the varieties in the field conditions. So we are working on that, and hopefully we will get there one day. Okay, just briefly outlining the management strategies for Sclerotinia for 2012. As I just mentioned, there is not much varietal resistance to Sclerotinia in our varieties. So in the absence of adequate resistance, the only options for us is to use long rotations with non-host crops. and avoid sowing close to last year's canola infected crops, whether it's canola or lupins. Use clean seed free of sclerotes, and use fungicide, as now we know that we have access to fungicides which are registered, and they show good efficacy against this disease. So this is just a list of the fungicides which are currently recommended for control of Sclerotinia in Australia. But I would like to mention that whether or not the risk of Sclerotinia warrants fungicide application is a very, very difficult decision. It's very hard to decide, especially for the growers, how much disease will be there in the crop, what the risk is, and whether they should be spray fungicide or not. To address this problem, we are trying to develop a Sclerotinia risk assessment tool, which is sort of a simple qualitative sort of scale where we are trying to develop for the use by the growers, and it is actually based upon various risk factors, as you can see on the left hand side. And for example, with if the number of years since last canola grown, rotations, rain in the last 2 weeks is more than 30 mil, the risk is high, and so on. Actually haven't got the time to go into detail of this, but I think we are in the stage where we will develop this Sclerotinia risk assessor that will help growers to determine what sort of risk they will have from Sclerotinia and whether or not they should apply fungicide. Okay, just shifting the focus to blackleg, which is still our #1 enemy. We know that there are some fungicides which are registered for blackleg, seed dressing, and in furrow. We try to look at some foliar fungicides for managing blackleg, and we did this trial at Katanning last year under moderate disease pressure situation. We applied Impact as a foliar application, and also Prozaro or prothioconazole. We applied the foliar applications either at single application at full rate or split application at half the rate. Of course, we had standard treatments such as in furrow and jockey, and nil and full control for yield potential. So we got very encouraging results again with the foliar fungicides for blackleg control, as you can see in this graph. This graph shows the effect of fungicides on blackleg severity or percentage disease index and yield. And you can see that all these fungicide treatments significantly reduced the disease compared with the nil treatment, and there was good yield response, and it was significant response to fungicide in all those treatments. Okay, so there was a good relationship between it was actually a strong negative linear correlation or relationship between disease severity or percentage disease index and yield of canola, which shows that surely blackleg affects the yield of canola. So now just looking at economics of applying fungicides for blackleg control. As you can see, we got a very good return of applying fungicide in all those treatments, especially even with jockey. You can see that the net return over untreated was $121 per hectare through to $297 per hectare. So this actually gives us a good option, another alternative option of controlling blackleg if growers haven't used Impact as upfront fungicide for blackleg control. So just wrapping up, foliar fungicides apply especially Roveral and particular Prozaro were most cost effective for Sclerotinia stem rot control, but we got to be aware that Prozaro is not as yet registered for the control of Sclerotinia in Australia. And secondly, petal infection is not a sole predictor of determining final disease severity, and therefore we have to develop a Sclerotinia risk assessment tool that will be a major breakthrough, especially in guiding for spray decisions. And finally, the split foliar applications of both Impact and Prozaro, they proved to be very superior and most cost effective for in-crop management of blackleg. And finally, I would like to acknowledge GRDC for funding, and Emma Bira, Tirani Kirby for their excellent technical assistance, and of course Charlton and Katanning Research Support Units for their excellent support. Thank you very much for your attention.